Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Arkham Horror Files. I'm your host, Nate, lost in time and space, and in this series, I choose an investigator from the Arkham Horror LCG, overview their investigator and signature cards, and go over card choices and deck building strategies I think work well with that investigator. In today's episode of the Arkham Horror Files, we'll be examining an investigator that's a personal favorite of mine, Joe Diamond, Private Eye. Joe Diamond is a private eye with a reputation for handling cases that everyone else regards as supernatural nonsense. He is thorough in his investigations and not one to be trifled with. His services have been employed by the wealthy as well as the down on the class. No case is too large, too small, too strange, or too dangerous. In Joe's experience, things start getting nasty right when you start reaching the truth. And that is exactly where he likes to be. Joe Diamond is a Seeker-class investigator with 2 willpower, 4 intellect, 4 combat, and 2 agility, and bears the detective trait. Joe has 8 health and 6 sanity, and has an ability that raises... Before reading his abilities, it's important to go over Joe's deck building options and requirements. Joe has a deck size of 40 with deck building options of Seeker cards levels 0 through 5, Guardian cards levels 0 to 2, and Neutral cards levels 0 to 5. His deck building requirements include Detectives Colt 1911s, Unsolved Case, and 1 random basic weakness. Additionally, your deck must include at least 11 insight cards, including Unsolved Case. During the setup of each scenario, you must choose 11 insight events from your deck, one of which must be Unsolved Case, and shuffle them into a separate Hunch deck. We'll discuss the Hunch deck in more detail later on in the video, but for now let's go back to the front half of Joe's Investigator card. As I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself, Joe has an ability that reads, Forced. When the investigation phase begins, reveal the top card of your Hunch deck. Until the end of the phase, you may play that card as if it were in your hand at a -2 cost. If it is still revealed at the end of the phase, shuffle it back into your Hunch deck. Lastly on his Investigator card, when an Elder Sign is revealed from the Chaos bag, it bears the effect +1. You may move an Insight event from your discard pile to the bottom of your Hunch deck. The Private Eye has a lot of great things going for him. His high intellect and high combat, coupled with his Seeker and Guardian card pool, make Joe an excellent solo investigator, as he can gather clues and defeat enemies efficiently. In multiplayer, this flexibility allows the detective to fill the roles of the team's primary investigator, focusing on clue gathering, or being the team's primary combatant, flexing into his Guardian card pool. The obvious comparison to make at first glance is that Joe Diamond is basically reverse Roland Banks. At level 0, it's possible for Joe decks and Roland decks to be nearly identical to each other. Joe, however, can't pick up a shotgun and burst down boss enemies. Rather, he's better suited to picking off the weaker enemies with his weapons and playing cards such as I've Got a Plan or Acidic Ichor to deal with larger targets. While Joe can combat the forces of the Mythos fairly well, remember, he's still a Seeker-class investigator, so clue gathering is Joe's greatest strength. Seekers have access to some of the best cards when it comes to gathering up clues and card draw. Cards such as Preposterous Sketches, No Stone Unturned, and Cryptic Research are all great choices when looking for card draw in your deck. If you need extra clues, Connect the Dots, Deciphered Reality, and Working a Hunch can help you out. Additionally, all these cards bear the Insight trait. I bet you know where this is going. What separates this Joe from your average Joe is the unique secondary deck which you draw from, called the Hunch deck. As stated earlier, this deck is made at the start of the scenario from 11 insight events, one of which being Unsolved Case. The rest are up to you. Most events in the Seeker class bear the Insight trait, and there are a good amount of options from the Guardian card pool as well. If you're building Joe to be the team's combatant, you can include cards like Delay the Inevitable, Emergency Aid, and Logical Reasoning to bolster your health and sanity pools. You can also use Joe's Hunch deck as a clue generator with Scene of the Crime, and the previously mentioned Connect the Dots, Deciphered Reality, and Working a Hunch. ArkhamDB user Duke Loves Biscuits laid out in his review for Joe on the site some notable observations you may want to consider when constructing your Hunch deck, which I'll put up on the screen for you now. Paraphrasing Duke here, Cards from your hunch deck can only be played during the investigation phase. This makes a card like Forewarned not useful in your hunch deck. Additionally, you cannot commit cards from your hunch deck to skill tests. Second, since Joe's ability reduced the costs from your hunch deck by 2, you generally want to play 2-cost cards over anything else. And 3, in the same vein, cards with fast are also great in your hunch deck. A fast card that costs 2 or less is completely free when played from your hunch deck. What you choose to include in your hunch deck will ultimately depend on the scenario, your deck, and the group you're playing with. Moving on to Joe's signature cards, we have Detective's Colt 1911s. This 4-cost asset bears an Intellect, Combat, and Wild skill icons. This card has the item, weapon, and firearm traits, comes into play with 4 ammo, takes up 2 hand slots, and reads, "Up to 2 tool assets you control do not take up hand slots." The 1911s also have an action that states, "Spend 1 ammo, fight." You get +1 combat and deal +1 damage for this attack. If this attack defeats an enemy, you may move an insight event from your discard pile to the bottom of your hunch deck. This signature card is decent. 4 cost is in line with other cards like the 45 automatic, but has better skill icons. The first line of text allows you to keep holding your flashlight or magnifying glass with these in play, which is nice. Being able to recycle insight cards into your hunch deck can be helpful in niche situations, but by and large it's felt like flavor text to me. Again, decent card, but not the most exciting signature card. Joe's signature weakness, Unsolved Case, is a 4-cost event with the insight and mystery traits. This card reads, "Place one of your clues on the location with the highest shroud. Removed Unsolved Case from the game. Forced. If Unsolved Case would be shuffled into your hunch deck, add it to your threat area instead. For the remainder of the game, it gains Forced. When the game ends, Joe Diamond earns 2 fewer experience for this scenario." When analyzing this card, it's important to remember that this card begins play in Joe's hunch deck. With Joe's Forced ability, this event really costs 2 resources. This weakness can be easily played around in just about every scenario, barring maybe the house always wins, by just not spending your last 2 resources. Often you're just losing 2 resources in an action, which isn't going to ruin your game, and if you do happen to drop a clue back onto the board, the Private Eye has plenty of ways to get it right back. The fact that this weakness isn't in your standard deck also has the added benefit of not robbing you of a draw during your upkeep or draw action. In standalone mode, this weakness is laughable, and in campaign mode, honestly, losing 2 experience won't be the end of the world. Overall, this weakness is one of the easiest to deal with in the entire game. Rounding out the rest of your Joe deck, again, depends largely on your game mode. In solo mode, it's important to have a good balance of clue gathering and combat, whereas in multiplayer, you'll likely be focusing one way or the other, but still be able to do a bit of both. Joe may seem like an unstoppable investigator during the investigation phase, and this is generally true. During the Mythos phase, however, the Private Eye is at the mercy of the encounter deck. A meager 2 in both willpower and agility likely means Joe will be failing most tests on encounter cards. Higher education can be a good way of boosting your willpower, if you have the resources, but when it comes to agility, your options are pretty limited. This can make traversing through the jungles of Mexico a most deadly encounter for the detective. Fortunately, in most cases, Joe can take a hit on the chin and continue forward. All in all, Joe is a strong, flexible investigator. His hunch deck can generate a ton of value throughout the course of the scenario. Joe's flexibility make him capable of fulfilling either the team's primary clue gatherer or monster hunter well, and switch between them when needed. With a machete in one hand and a flashlight in the other, Joe can be among the best solo investigators in the game to date, so long as there aren't any snakes involved. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Arkham Horror Files. I want to hear from you though. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what investigator you want to see for the next episode. If you like this video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this one, hit that subscribe button to become one of the many that are lost in time and space. I want to thank you as always for watching, and have a great day.